Okay. Okay, we will start the Finance Committee meeting of March 7th at 7:31. Present are committee members Glassman, Everett, and Williamson, council members Caucus, Keenan, Madden, and Scarl, the mayor and the directors of law, finance, HR, economic development, safety, service, recreation, and the special assistant to the mayor. On the agenda for this evening is 2023-21, the permanent budget. As we have discussed previously, myself and some other council members have concerns about where the budget projections are and what that means for our financial position, specifically projecting a 12.6% drop versus last year's revenues. So far, we're at a drop of 3.5%, so that's 9 points better than the projection. Director Copper has not had the opportunity to be with us the past 2 weeks, and so she has sent a packet of material. And Director, if there's anything you wish to address, or if you like to speak to the result, please go ahead.
Could I sit here just so I can chat? Thank you. First off, thank you for letting me clear up. I don't want to spend a lot of time on the things that were already discussed and memos that were sent by my assistant finance director and myself. But I do want to reiterate the 2022 income tax collection, specifically the net profits, were an anomaly. When you look, I only have, this is the chart that was sent on the 21st. You very clearly see that 2022 was far exceeded any trend that we were having, specifically in the net profit section. So additionally, all the reasons that we talked about in November and December and in February that I stated why I felt that we still needed to budget conservatively and that these income tax projections are what I still believe are to be a good basis for our projections moving forward at this time. Does that mean that we're going to make changes down the road? I mean, there are times during the year where there's a lot of income tax collection that comes in, and it can change your view as to how the year's going. So, but as in every year, we look at these, we monitor it, and we adjust accordingly. However, I wanted to also address, you had mentioned some of the other communities that you had looked into, and you can compare a city to another city's income tax collections. However, you have to understand each city's tax base and each city's tax structure, which is different, or can be different. Our tax base is about 70% income tax from withholding. And we have only about 2 million in which is like 15% in individual for people who have to file income tax returns with the city of North Olmsted. And then the remaining portion, which usually is about the same as individual, but was dramatically higher last year, is the other portion of it. And that's for businesses' income tax. So you have to have a business tax base in your community as well. And one other correction, they had provided the wrong information to your clerk and had provided their 2022 original budget. But when you look at their 2022 actual to their 2023 estimate, they're 15.4% down. And I asked her just to see if there was something significant in their tax base that changed that I wasn't aware of. And she said that, her continued worries over the recession, what the economists have been saying, the 20% increase they had a 20% increase over 2021, and it's not sustainable. So, and again, being conservative, you can always make adjustments, but it's better to make adjustments in a positive way than having to make cuts. And we've certainly done both, depending on what we're looking at as far as budget, revenue, and expenditures. But it's always better to not have to cut when you don't want to, and just have a good news that, hey, guess what, our income tax collections are coming in good. Fairview, another example, has a 2% income tax like we do, but they only have a 75% credit. They're kind of they're a bedroom community. They don't have a lot of business, so they get a lot of their money from their individual, because anyone who works outside of the city only gets a 75% credit for what they paid to their workplace city. So they owe another portion to complete their income tax obligations, where we have 2% and 100% tax credit. And then Westlake, I mean, I wish I had their problems. They have a 1.5% income tax credit. They have a good withholding and net profit. They have a lot of businesses and corporate businesses in that community. But they have a lot of growth too. They're still growing where we're not, as far as even homes or businesses. So that's why you have to be careful comparing us to Westlake as well. And so I worked with my assistant finance director, who loves making charts and graphs, and we I wanted you to look at the general fund. This is the total general fund revenues for the last 5 years, budgeted to actual. It's the original budget, the revised budget, and the gray is the actual for the year. And as you can tell, 2022 was dramatically higher. If you look at some of the other years, even, like you said, even during COVID, we weren't that far off in our revenue estimates to our budget, and what actually happened. And when you look at 2023, what we have as estimated resources for the general fund, it's higher than every year's actual budget or whatever, except for 2022. And a big part of that is income taxes. And from the 2022 to 21, it's a 7% change from budget to actual. Now, if you look at then the general fund expenditures, which are the second slide, there you can tell that again that our charts, our budgets are higher and our expenditures are coming in lower, which that's good news. And if you look at, there's a lot of reasons why expenses don't come in where we plan for them. Priorities change. There's staffing, attrition, things like that cause those things. And if you look at last year, 90.5% of the budget was expended in 2022. And over the last 5 years, it's 89% average. So if you took 9.5% of what the 2023 budget is projected to be at this point, we'll probably, more than likely, have unexpended funds of a little over $3 million just from the expenditure side of things. And I just wanted to mention, this chart, this 2023 expenditure, it's a big jump from prior years. I will say that. But there's several large grants that are in here that, weren't anticipated, and, those are one-year things. We're also paying down the school purchase, part of the general fund monies. We're doing a moderate start to put into our capital improvement funds to transfer to get that started to grow. And as well as a lot of projects and programs that council's heard through the budget hearings that I believe that you've supported. So if you look at the general fund expenditures category, you look at by category, this is, you can recognize the general fund is 72.4% wages and benefits and 16% contractual services. If you go to the next chart, just putting it in a different format, note that safety is 53.4% of the general fund budget, and 19.4% is general government functions, which we're all included in, and 16.6% is service. But remember that 50% of the road crew wages and benefits is paid out of the street maintenance and repair fund, so it doesn't reflect the whole cost of the service. I'd also like to take a moment to go back. Maybe you might understand more clearly why I'm very serious about being conservative about budgeting and monitoring the budget closely. Back in 1996, before I was here, our city was downgraded to a Baa1 bond rating, and the report cited considerable financial weakness of recent years due to management's inability to balance very extensive capital and safety needs within budgetary constraints, compounded by consistently overly optimistic budgetary assumptions, resulting in a deficit position in the general fund and other key funds, of which was the bond retirement fund, sewer revenue fund, and the solid waste fund. And over the years, when I came in here, we changed that. All of us did. Management, including council, the administration, and the finance department. And even as soon as 2001, we were getting notices in our report, and we were upgraded one because we expect the city's satisfactory financial operations to continue, given fiscal controls and conservative budget policies imposed by the new management in recent years. In 2006, Moody's believes management's history of conservative budgeting and emphasis on operational efficiency, coupled with sustained moderate growth to income and property taxes, will support the maintenance of sound reserves over the near to intermediate term. 2013 all the way through 2021, and our rating went up again during that time in 2010 actually. But the city's financial operations are expected to remain strong in the near term due to a proactive and conservative management team, healthy and growing reserves, and a demonstrated willingness to make mid-course budget corrections, which we've had to do. And similar all the way in our reports as we borrowed through 2021. That's why I believe that we have a good track record of accomplishing this through our conservative revenue, our expenditure budget, recognizing that we have to keep monitoring, which we do. A budget is a living and breathing document. It starts at this point, even from November to February, there were changes because things changed. We got grant opportunities and things like that. So, and sometimes things just break that you don't anticipate breaking, then you have to change your priorities. And sometimes revenue doesn't come in as we plan, and we have to adjust accordingly. We've been successful at doing this for 20 plus years. And that's why I believe we have a proven track record of strong fiscal management, proactive when we need to be, and that's why I think I'm recommending we move this budget forward, we monitor it, revenues and expenses, which we do every year, and if changes need to be made, we'll make them as we come. And that concludes my comments.
Thank you. I think we all support in general, a conservative approach. This is just vastly further than conservative. We're projecting our individual collections to be below 2017 levels. We're projecting our net profits to be below, with the exception of the pandemic year 2020, to be below 2015 levels. This is this is beyond conservative. So, but the projections are not changing tonight, is that correct?
They are not changing tonight, and I would argue, if you're talking at any one point of, but if you're talking income tax as a whole, this chart shows that other than 2022, the projections will be higher than any of those years, so I don't know where you're looking at that, so.
The individual categories, the categories that you held the withholdings constant, but the decreases are in individual and then profits. With
Correct.
Individual, we collected 2.45 million. We have budgeted 2 million, and the last time we were below 2 million was 2015. When we're talking about net profits, we're budgeting 2 million. Again, with the exception of 2020's COVID year, the last time we were under 2.3 would be 2018 then. 2017, December, federal government made a huge tax overhaul under the Trump administration, which dramatically incentivized filing net profits as the way you go as a small business. That is why we are seeing the buckets shift to that category. But, okay, so the projections are not changing tonight. So,
Mr. Chair,
yeah.
I don't believe that the tax changes at the federal level, these tax changes they've been incentivized for years to make estimates, paying in estimates and getting a credit on their own return, so on their federal return. So that is nothing that has to do with the Trump administration or any. It's been a practice for a long time. And if you look, you'll see net profits do fluctuate dramatically. And I think that we will see changes in it. And with the individual, I worry because we still have people working hybrid, working from home, and they're changing as we speak. There's a court case where we would potentially owe money to taxpayers who will be able to claim refunds, not against the city of North Olmsted, but it's against the city of Cleveland. And then they've been doing this in all the major cities and then going after all the suburbs. So I think there's enough, if we don't even want to talk about the economy or any of the other items that we discussed previously, there's enough in there that I think that our revenue adjustments, and I did look at them in February, just like we talked about, and I didn't feel that there was warranted to make a change in total at that point in time.
Okay, so we'll transition this discussion to what changes we want to make in the budget. Given this out. My intention would be personally to offer 3 specific changes. One of which would be, I don't see if we are going to be having this dramatic of a decrease in revenue, how we can justify going out of state for travel. So anything associated with that, I know finance has an item there. They don't know if anyone else or any other department does. I would also suggest that if we have to make choices between investments, that spending $200,000 on time clock upgrades is not the highest and best use of our funds if we're going to be trying to set aside $500,000 for economic development. So those, and then the training associated with the new time clock system are the changes I would like to make. Now, I think from a timeline perspective, so that people can have everything in writing, it would be most prudent for us to have, consider having a special council meeting and another finance committee next week where we actually vote on those changes and any other changes folks want to make. But I want to open the floor to any other changes folks want to discuss or process folks want to discuss. Mr. Goldberg.
And just for clarification, so how much out-of-state travel do we have? Is, I know there was other training, but was that only the finance that's going out of state?
It's Mr. Chair, it's not the finance department, it's people going to the ERP system software. One is from finance, one is from HR, and one's from building. And Mr. Chair, may I also, while I understand your concern for economic development funds, I understand that. The time and attendance system, it's not for physical time clocks, it's for an integrated ERP portion of that then will integrate into our payroll system and will help the divisions not have to monitor time off and sick time and all that in various different ways they do. It's not a big deal for small departments, but for the large departments, it's a time savings that they had been looking forward to. So I think it will gain efficiency for our city as a whole.
When we got further clarification on this issue previously, there was a significant outlay, as I said, $200,000, and the payoff was not realized until year 5. I think we are going to need to make economic development investments and decisions on a sooner timeline than that. So again, if we have to pick and choose between things, that's an example of something that I would be more inclined to do. Ms. Heeman?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to see the totals of those. Unfortunately, I apologize, I didn't bring my big writer tonight. But I'd like to see the totals on those, and in part because now we have to make an investment in dispatch, which we're choosing to do as well. And that will be over another 3 or 4 year time period at the same time that we'd like to grow our economic development. And so I think that perhaps, you might be correct in that, cutting some of these things now, and since none of the employees are gonna change, even though the director of finance is commenting on the fact that there's gonna be all this improvement and efficiency, she's not cutting back that department at all, and we're not cutting back other departments, nor do we want to. We do not want to change the employee structure. But however, if the investment isn't gonna pay off and they're doing the job just fine now, perhaps that's something we should look at.
Other comments or questions on items or timeline? Mr. Scarlett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to second what Councilman Heeman said about the employees. We're not in favor of cutting any employees to get this budget under control. So whatever we have to do to work on getting it, it won't be through the employees. Thank you.
Mr. Scarlett. Ms. Gilchrist.
I would like to third what both of them just said about the employees. I'm not interested in cutting any employee positions.
Mr. Walton.
So that includes all the adding of positions to this budget, right? When we say cutting, we're adding additional personnel and fire safety, economic development. So is that what everyone's saying? We want to add all the people, and then we'll find programs to cut if we run into budget issues.
I believe that money was already allocated.
Yeah, that was already, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
Sure. Yep.
I'm sorry.
Mr. Lippery asked a question. I understand the back and forth nature. Go ahead, Ms. Heeman.
Thank you so much. Those were actually calculated into our budget as first thing. The other things is that, they're part-time positions, they don't have benefits and other costs associated with them. I think there is only one full-time or no?
No, there's a number of new full-time. There's 3 fire paramedics that moves us from 2 to 3 squads. There's supervisor and dispatch.
Those are all safety.
Yes, I'm not recommending we eliminate positions.
No.
What I'm saying is if we're going to make isolated investments, and this is all that we have to work with, then we have to make different choices. And so, for me, that's a choice that I would make, is I would put our economic development ahead of that specific example with the time clocks and the ERP.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I really have to agree with that, and to Mr. Lippert, I'm sorry, I know that you think this employee issue is like too many employees, but they're safety employees, the bulk of them. I think they should remain. I also think that we've discussed multiple times the value of munis versus other things, and so to continue throwing that money into something that we're considering isn't, what we are gonna end up with at the end of the day, seems throwing a lot of money at it.
So we do have a
Mr. Chair.
council, we have a council meeting tonight, so I want to be respectful of.
Mr. Chair.
Sorry. Short Crawford.
We're adding Tyler products. The new building improvement downstairs is Tyler. So Munis isn't going, Munis, Tyler, ERP, it's all the same thing. And I don't think if they would be making investments in it, if they thought that it was gonna be going away. So just clarifying the record. But if you don't think the time and attendance, I agree. If we've been doing it this way, we can keep doing it the way we're doing it, that's fine.
It's almost 8 o'clock, so go ahead, Missy.
5 years now, voicemail, headsets for dispatchers. I don't know, we keep asking for it and it doesn't come, so, and I believe that was a project you were working on, Director, so please, we're looking at all kinds of things. Thank you.
All right,
I know I was in
all
charge
right.
of the phone system, but I'll work on it.
Again, I want to come back to process so that we can actually have our council meeting tonight, folks. So my suggestion would be that we formally adopt amendments next Tuesday so that we can have a special council meeting that Tuesday afterwards, so that we can have this on 3rd reading on the normal meeting scheduled the 21st. Is everyone okay with that process timeline?
I mean, it sounds like everyone's nodding their head that they don't have a problem with it. Why don't we just amend it now? I mean, my only concern, just to clarify something, is, when we're adding people, we're adding long-term expenses where some of these are long-term efficiency gains. So that, I'm not saying that's what we should do. I'm just proposing there's 2 different ways to approach savings, right? But it sounds like
No,
everyone's,
excuse me.
I'm talking, we're on the committee, but I'm speaking.
I wanna just make sure that
Oh,
everyone's
you're
aware
as
of
council
the
president,
time.
yes.
Yes,
Okay.
because
So my recommendation is that we just, as a committee, are you in favor of those changes?
I don't wanna do this tonight. I wanna meet next week. I wanna make
Okay.
sure that we have it all hashed out, that we are able to account for the funding. I just think that doing this all right now is gonna be too rushed, and I would just think that maybe another
That's
conversation
fine,
next
I'm
week
okay with next week.
to find out, and then we can figure out. I mean, so is it the consensus then, hold this in committee, we'll have another meeting next week.
Meeting next week.
What time would we like to do that, and what time would we like to?
Should we still do the caucus and figure that out?
We could.
Everyone's okay? We're going to close finance.
Yes.
All right. Sorry, you make a motion to hold the committee? What's your motion? That is my motion. I asked for a second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Lippert.
Second
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
3-0. And we are done with finance
So
at
we
8
thought,
o'clock.
so we think, so we hope. Okay, we will begin the caucus meeting of March 7, 2023, at 8 p.m. Present are all members of council, the mayor, directors of law, finance, human resources, economic development, service, recreation, special assistance to the mayor and guests. If there are no additions or corrections, the caucus meeting minutes of February 21st, 2023 are approved as written. There are 5 items on the agenda being requested for suspension this evening. The first is ordinance 2023-23, which is on second reading. Mayor, would you like to address this?
Thank you, Madam President. This was heard in committee last week. It's an ordinance to make appropriations for the demolition of Spruce Elementary.
Thank you. Are there any objections from council to suspension? Okay. Also being requested for suspension is ordinance 2023-27 on second readings. Mayor Jones, would you like to?
Thank you, Madam President. Again, this ordinance was heard in committee last week, and it is to enter into a 5-year lease agreement with Motorola for the dispatcher's consoles.
Yes, we did have that discussion, sir. Thank you. Are there any objections from council to suspension on this ordinance? Okay. Next request for suspension is resolution 2023-31 on second reading. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam President. This also was heard in committee last week regarding an agreement with Cintas for uniforms and supplies for several different departments within our city structure.
Thank you. Any objections from council to suspension on this piece? Okay, seeing none. The next request for suspension is resolution 2023-32 on first reading. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam President. Our Director of Recreation and Public Engagement, Mr. Pinchuk, is here to speak on this if there's questions. This is regarding going out to bid for the perimeter netting for the field turf in the newly redesigned field house in our recreation center.
Thank you, Mayor. Are there any objections from council?
Thank you. As the chairperson of the recreation committee, I have no objections to this because it's only for the purpose of going out to bid. It's not actually entering a contract and, spending it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so there's no objections to this. The last request for suspension is resolution 2023-33 on first reading.
Madam President, this is a resolution for a 3-year contract with Met Telecommunications to provide for 911 emergency phone lines. And by entering into this contract, our police department had found that we will save approximately $800 a month by switching over to this particular communications organization. These are regarding lines coming in, especially to assist us with Fairview Park dispatching. That's what it is.
Thank you. Any objections from council to suspension? Okay. Assigning legislation, resolution 2023-34 will be assigned to the Building, Zoning, and Development Committee, and scheduling committee meetings for Tuesday, March 14th. Councilman Glassburn, would you like to schedule a finance meeting? Councilman Kinlass, would you want to do that?
Yeah, I'm going after it all. 7:30 is fine. 7:30.
Finance is on Thursday. Alright, finance will be some.
Sure.
Do you wanna do, do you wanna do, BZD after the council meeting then, since it's kind of gonna roll on? Everybody wanna read BZD until the normal agenda? There's no reason, there's no rush on the BZD item of suspension or emergency, is there? That we need additional.
Madam President, to the councilman, there's no rush.
So, how much time do you think that we need for finance? We count at least 30 minutes to 45.
I would hope we could be done in 30 minutes. I mean, I would think we would have on paper amendments, and so it would be a matter of agreeing or disagreeing, and so I don't think that should be a long drawn out process, but.
We can never tell, tonight wasn't gonna be a long one either.
So, President, if we could have, if you guys can get the adjustments to us, because sometimes people don't understand fund accounting and think they're changing something and getting money, but it's really not in the general fund versus it's in another fund. So, sometimes we have to work through those issues. So if you're gonna be putting it on as amended on second reading that night on the 14th, then, if we could have, the adjustments or any to us prior to, so that we can have the ordinance created as amended.
And we'll have the responses back in time,
Yeah,
and not like 20 minutes before our meeting?
well, considering council didn't ask me any questions, I didn't really know what to say, so
That's
I
not a
made a
question.
presentation that I thought answered
Thank
the
you, Madam
questions.
So,
7:30 is fine.
7:30 for finance, 8 o'clock for a special council meeting, and then,
I'll schedule a BZD meeting following that council meeting, so.
we'll just do say 8:05 and then
8:05, yeah.
go from there. Okay, one last thing, does anyone on council have any concerns with extending the option to conduct council committee or boards and commission meetings virtually until the end of the year? Council Broussard conveyed that he does not. Does anyone else? No objections, okay. Council have anything else they wish to mention this evening? No, alright, seeing nothing else, caucus meeting of March 7th, 2023 is adjourned at 8:07 p.m. Thank you.
I did.
No, I don't think I can.
Okay, I thought.
What time is it?
How
you doing?